Yeah. So 29th, 2025 Apex Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting. As always, we'd like to start off with a moment of invocation. If you would, moment of silence. Thank you. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business will be the approval of the September 24th, 2025 meeting minutes. Meeting minutes are sent out ahead to the board for review. If there are no corrections or objections to those minutes, we would just need an approval of those minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next up, executive report and projects and program report.
We'll jump right into Megan Jones. We've got an update for the camps back in June, or I think it was the June-July timeframe. Someone came in and kind of requested that we take a look at what we could potentially do with additional camps, increasing the sizes. So she's going to provide the information that we've found out, and then I'll follow up her presentation.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Yay. Well, thank y'all for having me. My name is Megan Jones, if I haven't met you yet. Lead Recreation Program Specialist with Parks and Recreation Department. I appreciate y'all giving me and Elizabeth Schoaf the time to kind of pull together information to present to you guys about what it would take to expand our Fun Days summer camp program. As some of you know, Elizabeth just had a baby, so we're wishing her lots of well wishes. She would be here if she could. So just to kind of overview, I'll just kind of quickly go over what the summer camp program is, some of the limitations that we're facing with space over at the community center, and kind of how we approached what a potential expansion could look like. So the Fun Day Summer Camp over at the community center, we run 7 weeks, Monday to Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's about 10.5 hours a day. We offer camp to 35 campers per week, ages 6 to 11. They're split up into 2 groups based off of age, so we have roughly about 18 and 17 per group. We have a total of 245 individual spots throughout the summer. $120 per week for a resident. It's pretty in line with what each municipality in the county is doing. Pretty great rate for a full day of care for kids. And then we have an average of about 86 registrants on the wait list in 2025. And then just to also kind of give you full scope for our medical and inclusion needs. So that could be anything from ADHD to peanut allergies that require emergency medicine, anxiety, what have you. We had 77 total campers needing some additional support. That was about 11 campers per week. So also to give you just an overview of staffing. So we run on a 1 to 12 staffing to camper ratio. This is something that the American Camp Association, who's kind of like the gold standard for camps, sets. Most of the municipalities in the area follow this, or some even do a 1 to 10, a 1 to 8, just depending on the type of camp that they're running. But for us, we typically do the 1 to 12 ratio. We also kind of further hone in and say the rule of 3. So we always try to have 3 staff per group at any given time. That way, if we have an injury or we're dealing with a behavior issue, we can have a staff person step out and there's still 2 staff in the room, so we're in that ratio. We never do one-on-one. We also never have 1 staff alone with a group, which is something that some organizations do unfortunately do over the summer. Some additional factors as we're looking at staffing. All of our staff are LSE, so limited service employees. They're limited to 40 hours per week. Also with the Elders Law, all of our staff are limited to 999 hours in a calendar year. So that comes into play with our year-round staff. So we have staff who work our track out camp throughout the year, and then they also work summer camp. So we kind of have to factor that all in. We also have considerations for staff time off. We know most of these are college kids or teachers. They want a week off here or there. We want to give that to them. And we also factor in staff call outs. So they always come in clusters. Everyone gets sick at the same time. Everyone has a surprise doctor's appointment at the same time. It's inevitable. I also included just some parent survey comments. Something that we get a lot of feedback, positive feedback about, is the amount of staff that we have with our kids. That's something that parents really like. It allows us to really get those close connections with the campers, and something that keeps bringing the kids back and bringing the parents back. So as we're looking at expanding camp, it's important to kind of note some of the restrictions that we have at the community center. So on top of the Fun Day Summer Camp program, we also have several very popular contracted camps that run at the community center. So our basketball camp serves about 170 campers over 3 weeks. That takes space in Gym 2 all day. As you know, that affects pickleball. So it's not just us that is being affected with space. We have our volleyball camp that serves about 100 campers over 3 weeks that they run. That's Gym 1. That directly affects Fun Days Camp. That's where we spend a lot of time. So we kind of lose access to that for a portion of the day for 3 weeks. We had a science camp this past summer that was in our summit room. That's one of the main rooms that we use in camp. That served 12 campers. Kidapalooza camp, 50 campers over 2 weeks. Again, Gym 1 in the mornings takes gym space away from us as well as the Journey League Day Camp. It was about 40 participants over 2 days, again, Gym 2 and one of our back classrooms. I think it's important to note that with these other camps that we offer, we were able to serve an additional 335 kids throughout the summer. So it's not just Fun Days Camp where we're having camps. That's not to even mention the camps that are being run over at the Halley, as well as camps that we contract over at Pleasant Park. It's also important to note that we have some regular programs that meet in the community center over the summer that are very popular. They use Pinnacle and Zenith, which are our other 2 classrooms, on 2 days a week. So all day on Tuesdays, half days on Thursdays. We lose access to those spaces as well. Additionally, senior pickleball, we know it's very popular. That is every day in the morning, so open play. They've also run a couple clinics over the summer, and they also had a round robin tournament. Again, they use Gym 2. And then I think it's also important to note that we have a lot of regular visitors and walkers that use our building. I know it's not a quantifiable thing, but it is something that we serve for the community when it's hot outside, they just want to walk inside, or they just want to come use the game room at the community center. So as you can see, we're kind of at capacity with space. There's some weeks where we have multiple of these camps going on at the same time. We have multiple of these programs going on. And so we're maxed out when it comes to space. So that led us to looking at an off-site rental option. So kind of first that we looked at was local churches. When we started looking at local churches, we immediately realized a lot of them already run their own camps, or they have people who are coming in a contracted capacity to run camps at their sites. There's also some space limitations when it comes to churches. They don't have all the amenities that we're typically used to, like a gym or very spacious classrooms. So the church option wasn't really viable for us. So then we started looking at Wake County Schools. Wake County Schools is a popular option for some municipalities who are also running into the same feedback where they need more space for camps. So we started looking at what schools are in the area. It had to be a traditional calendar school. obviously. Couldn't have another camp or another organization there already. Having multiple camps at a site is a lot, especially when it's not your site. They needed to be open with our timelines. So we were we very much wanted to have the same amount of weeks, the same time frame, be able to offer to the same amount of kids or more. That was very important to us. So there were about 5 schools that kind of met that criteria. 2 of them got back to us that they were kind of willing to work with us. And the school that we ended up kind of proposing was Bockham Elementary. So Bockham, just right up the street from us, newly renovated. They have the types of spaces that we would need in camp. So they have a gym, they have classrooms that we can kind of separate the groups out into. They have a cafeteria where we can come in together as one camp. And they also have an expansive exterior, which is, we need that during the summer. The kids need to be outside. It's a centralized location in Apex. That was also important to us. We didn't want parents to have to drive from one end of the town to another. And it was also close to the community center, so convenient for me or my camp directors or anybody else who needed to run over there and handle something. They also, because newly renovated, they don't currently have any camps that are offered there. And the principal was also really open in our initial talks. She was pretty excited that the school was being looked at as a potential camp space. So what we proposed was the Fun Days Camp Program umbrella and then 2 different camps. So Camp Bockham, Camp JMBCC. So Camp JMBCC, which would continue to run out of the community center, we would increase from 35 campers to 40 campers per week. Again, split into 2 groups. That would be 20 per group. That's something that we feel like we can feasibly handle without having to increase our staffing. Still falls within our ratio, still falls within our rule of 3, and it wouldn't increase or decrease any of the strains at the community center. Looking at that 40 number, that really is maximum that we can do with the space that we have. We're also having to look at worst case scenarios. So a week like this where it's raining over summer camp, that is a lot when you're having to keep kids into 2 or 3 spaces. So the 40 at JMBCC is what we would like to do. And then for Camp Bockham, we would like to do 60 campers per week, split into 3 groups, again, kind of following that 20 per group. It would essentially be a mirror of the camp that's here. And what I mean when I say that is the schedules would be the same. We would have the same curriculum standards that we currently have, same theme. It would basically be the same thing, same weeks, same times offered. The difference would be that we wouldn't be doing off-site field trips using our buses, which I'll explain in the next slide. But one cool thing that we can do is bring the trips to the site. So there's a lot of organizations, there's a lot of businesses that have the capacity to bring things to your site. So for example, Treasure Quest Gem Mining over on Upchurch Street, we already go to them as a field trip. They have a mobile trailer that can come out. They bring it to schools, they bring it to camps, and you can gem mine on the trailer. Lots of fun ideas there that we were exploring. So talking through the buses, just so it's kind of clear what we mean with that. So with our summer camp program, we take anywhere from 1 to 2 bus trips per week. When we're taking bus trips, we have to split those into 2 days with our 2 groups. So we're having to take 2 buses per group because of the capacity of the buses. The buses themselves hold 14 per bus. So if we have a group of 18, that's 18 campers, plus we have about 4 staff. You do the math. We don't do any field trips on Mondays. That's a pretty standard thing with camp programs. Mondays, everyone's figuring everybody out. We don't want to take you off-site and figure you out off-site, just being honest. So if we were you know, if we were taking 2 bus trips, that would be 4 days worth of using the buses. If we take 1, that's 2 days worth of using the buses. We also have the specialized recreation group. They use our buses pretty frequently. Over the summer, they had 7 trips that they were on. I know that the senior center is interested in adding some summer trips. If we were to use the buses over at Bauckham, we wouldn't be able to have the seniors use the buses, and it would either eliminate or severely limit specialized recreation from using the buses. Additionally, because of the capacity that we would be looking at, we would have to hire at least 2 bus drivers to drive the buses. As it currently is, my 2 camp directors, 1 of my camp counselors, and me are the people who provide the transportation on the buses. There's no way we can all do all the bus trips. So that would kind of eliminate some of that strain that is currently there. So looking at the rental costs, fun stuff. So when you're looking at renting from Wake County schools, you get in contact with Communities in Schools, which is run through Wake County. And you tell them, hey, I'm with this organization, I'm looking to do this. And they place you into a fee category. Our fee category would be the NPM category, which is the nonprofit meeting category. They do the same for all of the municipalities across the county that are looking at renting space. So as you can see, the fees that are required per the space, $40 for a cafeteria per hour, $30 per classroom per hour, $72 per gym per hour, $20 for a playground per hour, and $20 for open play area, which is outside, per hour. Additionally, they require a $35 one-time application fee. There's a $35 per invoice fee, and that's either an invoice that we request or one that they send to us. And then they also require a Wake County Public School personnel on site the entire time of the rental. That's at $40 an hour per person. So with all of that calculated up, the cost just for the rental for the summer would be about $110,700. As you'll see, as I'm going over some figures, there's this June FY26. That is going to be the cost that we need to figure up for this current fiscal year, because this was not accounted for when we were doing budgeting. So that $17,790 is included in the $110,655, but it is pulled out just because it is an additional factor that we have to consider. One other thing that I think is very important to note is that Wake County does tend to charge for a lot of things that happen in the building. So if we accidentally kick a ball and break a ceiling tile, we get charged for that. We have to pay during a week where we don't run camp to be able to store our belongings at the camp or at the site, so we don't have to move in one week, move out another week, and move back in. So I just want you all to have that kind of full picture of what we're looking at. Yes. So then looking at the programmatic costs, so staffing, my position is calculated within the kind of cost with Fun Days camps as a whole. So that's why that is there. It's not hiring another full-time person. Camp director, one of those would be included in the Bauckham cost because I would need to move one of my camp directors to that site to manage that site. We would also need to create a position for a site coordinator because my camp director only works 30 hours a week. It's a part-time 30 position, so we need somebody else there in a leadership role when they're not there. We would need 12 camp counselor ones, which are our summer camp staff. They only work summer. That would be 4 staff per group, kind of rotating in and out of the day. And then we would additionally need our own dedicated inclusion counselor. So all of the wage costs together would be about $91,000 for the duration of the summer. the FY26 costs that we would need, so that would be training week plus June, that would be about $17,500. The admin costs, so training and uniforms, that would be an FY26 cost as well, about $13,300 for that. Then we're looking at the program costs, so some admin things, a phone, a laptop, our EPAC network, which is how we collect information about our campers, so things like allergy information, who can pick up my kid, who can't pick up my kid. That all cost is about $5,800. Again, that's kind of a startup cost, so that would be in June for FY26. And then direct camper costs, so camper supplies, total cost is going to be $14,400 for the duration of the summer. $7,200 of that is going to be that startup cost in FY26. That's going to be things like gym equipment, markers, scissors, that kind of stuff. And then our in-house field trips, we're looking at $10,500 for the duration of the summer. Again, that 1 week that we would be running in June would be $1,500. So then looking at projected revenue, we are looking to increase the cost of camp from $120 to $150. This kind of falls in line with increasing costs of supplies. Nothing new there. This is on our 50% recovery. So for Camp Bauckham, we would be looking at a potential revenue of $63,000. For Camp JMBCC, with the increased number of campers per week, that would be looking at a $42,000 projected revenue. And then finally, with the total costs, so total costs to run just Camp Bauckham with rentals, fees, everything is about $235,000. Again, all in costs for 7 weeks, plus that 1 week where we're having to pay to be there, but not be there. And then the kind of June FY26 cost is $60,242. With talks with our budget office, if we do move forward with this, that would require a budget amendment through council to find that $60,000. Questions?
So I'll follow up the presentation. With the cost of the camp and the return, we are not recommending going off-site to the school. The $234,000, $100,000 of that being a rental cost. From a fiscal perspective, PRCR would not recommend doing that. There are a lot of municipalities that are capping out with their programs too, and I think she mentioned that earlier. It was really good to go through the exercise and kind of enlighten everyone here as to what we're up against. I mean, we're welcome to take any questions that you have, but ultimately we are not recommending to do this. We're only increasing by 5 participants at the community center. Obviously we are strapped with indoor space. So, but if you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer. Or comments.
I'd just like to thank Megan because I thought that was an excellent overview for us.
Thank
Very
you.
informative.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good presentation. I appreciate it. And I just had a question, not that it would change the recommendation at all, but just curiosity. When you say that there are roughly 11 campers that need additional support per week, does that require additional staff assistance too sometimes? So that's in addition to something else to be thinking about. Yeah.
Yes. So this past summer, our Specialized Recreation and Inclusion Services hired a specific inclusion counselor. They hired one to see, how would it work out this year? That person was between not only Fun Days camps, but the contracted camps at the community center, as well as the half-day specialty camps at the Halley. So they were, you can imagine how many we had in Fun Days camps. It was constant. So then on top of that, when they weren't there to support us, that's when my staff was having to step in, which in most cases we would try to increase staffing during those times.
That's roughly a third of the campers that are in there with that.
Yes, yes.
Can you speak more to the contracted camps, the basketball and the volleyball?
Mhm.
Who's that with? What is the scenario for the town as far as like hosting the
Mhm.
contracted camps in the community center?
Yes. So I don't specifically manage the contracted camps. Those are managed under Elizabeth Schoaf. But we have people or organizations that come in and want to run their camps with us. So my understanding is that they are on a split with the town as far as who gets what revenue. I don't know, Craig, if you know much more about it.
So we have, just for example, David Neal. He handles our basketball camp at the facility. Former Apex high school coach, if that matters at all. But so he's got a split with us. It's probably like 60-40, I believe, is what we do with him. So he'll take 60% of the registration fees, and then everything else comes to us to host the camp. And that is one of our most popular camps. We also have a volleyball camp, and I forget her name.
Lorraine.
Lorraine.
There you go. But again, one of our most popular camps, but another 60-40 split when it comes to contracting those out.
Are they more expensive per week?
They are.
than-
Yes.
Yes, they are.
So that's exactly where I was going with it,
Yeah.
Lisa, is,
Yeah.
so I have no doubt that they're popular, right? We live in a very affluent area, and basketball, any youth sport camp is going to fill up, right, as you already know. I guess my concern with that, and I agree with the recommendation. I mean, Wake County Public Schools, their facilities, are we on the record? Yeah, no. Yeah, that's a really unfortunate situation.
Yes.
But my concern is, are we, by contracting out our space for camps, for these specialized camps at a higher price, are we displacing our residents as a result of that? Should we think about examining, since we're not moving forward with something like this, to expand services to our resident population, all of our resident population? Should we look at some of the contracted camps, regardless of how popular they are, and maybe consider allocating more space to our Apex camps so that we can service a greater segment of our population?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there is some value in having those specialty camps because they're offering something that we aren't necessarily able to offer. I don't have somebody, nor would I really be able to find somebody who has the experience that David Neal has, or the experience that Lorraine has, or be able to offer preschool camps for that matter. So I think they do offer a lot of value. I think that residents do really like those camps. They have a lot of repeat campers per year. Yeah.
And I think I would also add that I'd have to look at the numbers, but I would dare say 95% of the people in those camps are probably residents too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those are the questions in my mind, is that if we are so limited in our space, but then we're contracting our space out so that we're having to go off-site to make it not financially feasible for us to kind of fill a need of expansion that we're hearing, does that offset, the wait list waiting for this one camp? Is that based on need? And so does that speak more to what the higher need is for the community? Do the contracted camps go to the $72 an hour gym at Wake County Schools? I don't want to displace any camps that are serving, a need. I think it's just, where is the greater need? Is it in the more attainable, like financially attainable camps that we have the longer wait list for? So I think my questions are just, are those, is it worth contracting our space out if we're hearing what the demand is for that kind of camp? Can the contracted camps go someplace else? And then I think also, just in general, how do we compare to other municipalities of our size in our capacity for the camp that we're offering at the price point that we're offering. I would just want to kind of know that.
We're pretty on par. We've spoken with almost every municipality in the county, as well as Durham and some in Orange, with some similar size. We're all pretty much the same price. Most of us are offering the same hours with a few tweaks here and there, but everyone's basically on the same page with how much they're charging, and then kind of the subsidy that they get as well.
I have a question with the community center's operations versus if we were to do a Bauckham. So I kind of was just running quick numbers. So like Bauckham, I mean, it runs at like $172,000 deficit. So how does that compare to us operating when it's in the community center?
Yeah. So a big factor for that with Bauckham is the rental costs. We don't have any of that here since everything is entirely staff-led here. That's a big chunk that gets taken out that we don't have to factor in.
Sounds like we need to build other community centers. Just saying.
Is there a process for, like, kind of following up Lisa's question about the demand for certain camps? Is there a certain process that we follow to decide, you know, when we use space for basketball or when we use space for more of the general camps and things like that?
It's a great question.
There's not necessarily a process in that. So we've traditionally ran the basketball and the volleyball camp. The new camp that's come on board is the summer camp and the track out camps that we have. And the reason that we've been kind of restricted in that area was all of the senior activities that we held at the community center before the senior center was constructed. So the senior center being constructed opened up space to where we could actually do summer camps and track out camps daily. So for us, really the camps that have been stakeholders in that building have been the two camps that we're discussing, which is the basketball and the volleyball camps. I do think they have a place there. I do think, and we can pull the numbers and bring those back to you about resident numbers who are actually attending those camps there, just so you have the numbers to compare. But I do think there's a value to that. They're specialized camps. As she said, that we can't really offer within our day camps like we do. We don't have the specialized personnel to do that per se. But I do think there is a place for them from a Parks and Rec perspective.
I imagine families probably think that's a Parks and Rec camp, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it was here technically before.
Yes.
Yeah. Other questions, comments?
The only other comment that I would make is that it's always a juggling act in terms of, you know, we have limited space in all these programs. So I know that the avid senior pickleball community, we had to close down that for 5 weeks just to try to facilitate this. So you're exactly right that for staff, it's really trying to look at how do we spread out the resource of that space among the various competing groups.
And you'll hear me consistently say, we need indoor space. And you're going to hear about an indoor space here shortly. But we need indoor space. I mean, we're lacking space compared to pretty much every other municipality in our area, especially with Fuquay just opening up a facility that's got 3 gyms. They have 5 indoor gyms now. We have 2. And they have the use, just like we do, of our middle schools for gym space. But they have 5 of their own. And that's a huge difference. I mean, it's a huge difference. And Cary has a ton of gyms. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. And I think it's fantastic. That's just that the study also showed us that we can add some capacity.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
That's my report.
Yes, sir.
It's a long one today.
Yeah. Good deal. Next up, Chairman's report. I don't have anything this evening. Next, I don't think do we have people here for public comment? Okay, all right. And then old business, none of that. New business, discussion of possible motion regarding the proposed Viridia SD plan amendment. Angela.
Gonna give you the big whiteout version.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
So this is Angela's first official presentation as the assistant director. So I would like to congratulate her.
But not over that recreation stuff. Only parks, planning, and operations. So,
You do know the term recreation is just point
not
out.
in my title. Well, kind of, but anyway, just kidding. All right, so back again. Giving you a little bit of a history of a project that we've kind of provided you some updates off and on over the years. But this is Viridia, and Viridia was presented to this advisory, when it was the Advisory Commission, 2 times in 2009 officially, as they were working through a rezoning request. And so in August and September of 2009, this was presented to the Advisory Commission at the time, and they formulated a recommendation that was ultimately adopted with the SD plan in 2011. So if you hear that timeline, from the time that it left here until it actually went to Town Council for review and adoption of the SD plan, it was nearly like a year and a half later. So a lot of went into the rezoning of this massive area within our town. As a part of that recommendation that came out of the Advisory Commission was the need for land dedication, which also was further reiterated in our newest master plan update for indoor recreation. So tying back to that need. And at the time it was reviewed and the recommendation made, it was proposing a maximum of 8,000 residential units. So far more than you've seen recently in any project that has come through, when we're talking maybe 1,500. So it's a huge impact on our community. At the time, there was no recreation amenity south of US 1. We currently have Middle Creek Greenway, which is now opened several miles long, but that is still the only recreation amenity south of 1 is Greenway, so no facilities, no parks. So the recommendation included 4 specific metrics for land, and that included the priorities that were identified in the previous to the 2014 master plan, but it included 4 lighted regulation softball fields, 6 lighted tennis courts, a 22,500 square foot recreation center that basically complied or met what was the first phase of the community center as you know it today, before the gym and the administrative offices were added, and a 1-acre dog park. There were additional conditions. You have that sort of the framework of that, what's approved in the SD plan in front of you, but there were conditions about timing, a provision of a parks master plan that would need to be reviewed by this board, as well as going to Town Council with a recommendation, and other things about when the land needed to be identified, when it needed to be dedicated. So that was all included in the SD plan. And at the time, there wasn't an Article 14, so all of the provisions that you're working under today that we, guide you through and making recommendations, they were part of the subdivision section 7.3, or section 7, Article 7, and then further down in section 7.3. So we're working under the same rules today, but they've been pulled out and made specific to park and recreation land dedication and our special legislation. So we sort of are part of the subdivision process, but you guys make those recommendations solely on the aspects of park and recreation and land dedication. Let's see what else. Since that time, they have started to more recently make plans for developing the property under the SD plan. And that has included the approval of several residential areas within the project, some non-residential, and as well as utilities and things, you know, like that they have to do to be able to develop the property. As a part of that, they have sold sections of the parcel of the overall SD plan area to Wake Tech for a future campus, to Wake County Schools for I believe an elementary size site, and recently announced the intent to sell to about 230 acres to the NC Children's Hospital project. Those are substantial impacts to the amount of land that's available within their project limits. And while they've added some smaller tracts to sort of close the gaps that are in their boundary of their project, they haven't, you know, necessarily gone out and added hundreds of acres to the original approved property. They have also indicated that in doing some of that development planning the way that they are with the partners that they brought on board, that there's likely not at this point a plan to meet that 8,000 residential units, but maybe be more in the 5,000 to 6,500 range. So the sort of requirement for land to be dedicated at the end of the project based on the total number that would be developed would decrease from, you know, maybe 3,000 units from what was originally presented when the commission made the recommendations for the needs. Add to that, just around the corner, we've opened Pleasant Park. And so if you look at maybe the list of things that are included in Pleasant Park, they meet some of these requirements that were conditioned for them, such as us working right now to provide the 4 baseball, softball fields at the park. There were tennis courts added to the park. And so, in a sense, the main area that we're still in desperate need to meet is indoor recreation. And so, as a part of rezoning that they need to do, which sort of opens up the SD plan for discussion, they are needing to come back in to address some amendments that they need to make with the NC Children's Hospital. And so as a part of that are asking us to consider amendments to the recreation requirements and what was recommended in 2009 and adopted in 2011. So this is the overall. I'm just gonna do what I normally do and get you, here's a closer in, and just if anyone's not really aware of this, this is 540 as it swings sort of around here. This is 55 on this side as it comes down here. This is US 1. So they're predominantly dominated, surrounded by 3 main roads. And there is Big Branch Greenway that sort of comes down through and would ultimately come down through the site and connect to what is the proposed Jesse Drive extension from 55. But it's actually only over at 1010 right now, so it's a long road network that would come across. And then this is kind of going to be where we're going to start our conversation about the proposed amendments. So their request sort of falls into the idea of removing the entire section that relates to Parks and Recreation that was approved. So that's what you have in front of you. It's marked up a little bit differently in that the exemption from all requirements is not maybe where we want to finish, but with the concept of replacing pieces to meet current needs, and then us being able to work out what that looks like, the timeline for when that would be provided, and then ultimately your recommendation again gets approved by council, or they approve what they want, but they hear your recommendation. So I'm going to focus on the removal of the 4 items. So the 4 softball fields, the 6 tennis courts, the dog park, and the recreation center. And what is being proposed is that they are providing, and I'm doing this in the order that's in your sheet, so they are providing a meandering side path along a linear park area and a stormwater park that's substantial in size. And that is all being developed for public use, but is being privately maintained. So while these are public spaces that residents within the Verdia area, as well as anyone visiting the area, would be able to utilize, they're planned at this point to be built for public access, but maintained privately. And so what they're proposing is that we can negotiate and finalize some sort of agreement that would provide that same setup, but a true public access that would also provide us the ability to do programming within those spaces. So, potentially a special event held around the pond, or a festival that could be held there, or maybe, I'm just throwing out, we haven't talked about the specifics, but like a number of events that could be held and programmed by the town utilizing that space in a public way. We would need time to understand and work with them on, is that a number of times of year? Is it so many weekends? I want to make it similar in the concept to what we agreed with the Carolina Hurricanes, that they would run so many programs, they would have so many weekend uses, so many hours per night, or some way of detailing what that could look like, so that we understand like truly what we have at hand and what we can utilize it for based on our ability to access it and how often. So that's the first sort of condition. The second is to construct a 25,000 square foot recreation center. The original conditions was 22,500. They were kind enough in our discussions to agree to 25,000 square foot to give us a little more room. And they have, with our agreement, identified this area that you see, and you have a map in front of you, this blue outlined area that sort of sits in their East Village, close. The Wake Tech campus is on the south side of this road here, and there's a tunnel that goes under this road that they would be able to connect through pedestrian access to the recreation center. There's, again, this bicycle pedestrian pathway network that's on both sides of this road that would make access from the residential to this be possible through some other connections of bike and pedestrian facilities. And they have a core area here that's sort of like their main street with commercial, retail, offices, apartments. So they've kind of tied this into being more core to their core of their activated part of their project. The second part of that is that there is a request. I'm going to just ask you to ignore the name of this, but it is a bus transit center. And so the idea in concept is that this bus transit center would be located either adjacent to or connected to or in proximity to the recreation center, such that if someone, could ride the bus, or they obviously could come right to the center, wouldn't have to drive to it, and they could utilize the restrooms and other things so that they wouldn't have to duplicate some of those shared services. And then the other piece to this is an area that they had, are potentially and still planning to provide other constructed elements of their project that could be apartments, or it could be townhouses, or it could be mixed use office kind of things. And so We want to work with them to identify a way to maximize what we're able to develop as far as a recreation site, but also potentially do some things like shared parking, so that while, we're busy on a weekend, that's when their residents might, go someplace for the weekend, or there'd be apartments that would have backup to a parking deck, or a parking lot. Whatever would end up being a way that we could maximize the use of the land, but provide an activated space where the mix of uses makes sense. And so they're not far enough along in the plan to know exactly where it would fit within this space, but they've agreed that this is a place we can do this. We're not sure exactly what the building would look like. We would want to have the opportunity to be able to drill down more of saying, is that a full gymnasium? Is it a sports court? Is it, how many offices? What kind of classroom space would we need? And so, in a sense of being able to work with them on either detailing a general list or being engaged in, the commitment would be that we would have a say in how the programming of that space were designed through the development process. So that's your second condition, is that they would construct this. We've added a note in here, it's in green. We haven't had a lot of time to communicate this with them as they're moving to try to accommodate some schedule that they need to do to be able to close the NC Children's Hospital property. And so to try to make it a win-win, we're just developing sort of what does that plan look like, and understanding that this board in the past has gone through making a recommendation that guides us to where the next step is without necessarily having all of the little boxes checked today. And so that's part of where we're trying to get to, and they are, understanding what they need to provide, but we know sort of where we need to get to feel comfortable with what they're proposing. The third sort of item on their list is that that they would get credit against their fees. So as their projects have come in, we've been taking them to town council to set their fee rates. It's a little bit different because of the way this project was set up, that even though the rezoning happened in 2011, it was detailed out that their fees would be set at the time that the site or subdivision plans are approved. So we have recently approved two different sets, that one has a 2023 rate, I think, and one has a 2025 rate. And so as other projects come online, their rates would be set based on the year that that plan is being approved by our technical review committee. That's a practice we do with other rezonings, but so this one is different sometimes, just a little bit, than what you've seen on our standard plan developments because of the SD plan. And so all the fees that are being paid would be, and the timing of that is, are they paid based on our current ordinance of time, or would we create a different time schedule for them for the payment of those fees, and then establishing how much they're getting credited for those fees based on the construction. And so we just need to finalize how that works within Article 14, and or if we draft a whole new policy that fits into the SD plan, which then supersedes the ordinance and becomes their standard. So the third item is that they would get credit, and that the credit from residential constructed within the Viridia would go towards a bucket that would be theirs to be reimbursed from, so that all the fees that were paid into it would go back to cover the cost of building this building. And then that was kind of that they incur the expenses, and that the credit goes to them. And then the last is that there was a previous thing that kind of says who gets credit, and that it follows the state and local legislation for that. So while that's sort of in there as not a meet this requirement, it was in their original condition. So that's the sort of item 4 that you see in their list. What else can we tell you? Right now we have a timeline for when they had to require those things, we don't have a current timeline. And so with their original request to exempt themselves from these conditions, we're trying to establish when that timeline is. And we don't know what's feasible in a sense today because we'd have to figure out, it's different to say, oh, dedicate a piece of land or identify the piece of land versus identify it, dedicate it, and construct it. And so there might be some differences on when that timeline should happen. And so we want the ability to, again, work through that to get to that point. So that is sort of my overview. I suppose I should show you. This is the stormwater pond park that they have, just so you can see it's pretty substantial in size. And we have recently had a lot of requests for like an entertainment type space. And so this, maybe has the potential of being something that would meet that need. And you can see it has a lot, it's a large planned area, substantial in size. And so it appears that there's, potential to be able to hold something that could host a lot of people in this space. But again, with the parking and some of the access to that being using transit or parking in their core area and then walking or people walking to this or biking to this site. So just to give you that. We have the applicant and representatives here, so I'd rather leave it to you to kind of ask questions to all of us of any, questions, issues, concerns, thoughts you have. You also have a separate single sheet of 2 recommendations. This is kind of the far left and the far right, or the far top and the far bottom, whatever, however you want to, during election season, not making it like feel that way. But with the concept of, one is we like what we have, and we're saying, we don't understand or don't feel comfortable with all of this. That's kind of us saying it's not where staff is, but because this is kind of happening at, more at a faster pace and with a much bigger project that we aren't able to have the level of detail we might on something smaller. We're not saying that that's kind of where we want to sit, but we had to offer you that that's a place that you could start. And then the other is sort of the, give us the guidance that you're hearing what they're requesting and you understand that we're supportive of that, and sort of the rationale that things have changed since 2009 and 2011. We've met some of those needs in a very near proximity, and we have continued to identify, it's in our capital projects plan last year, it'll be in this year, that indoor space is our number 1 need. And so the ability to see this maybe on the horizon sooner, and in an area that's going to be rapidly growing around this project, we feel pretty confident that this is a good direction. And so we just need to get through those steps, and we'll do our due diligence to ensure that we're, looking into what our master plan is identifying, working with them on the what is in the space and the timeline for it, and then ensuring that it's compliant with all of the rules and standards that we have in place that we must follow, like our legislation, and then what we can present to council is something that we can truly support that will implement our plans and our strategic goals. So I'm going to take it back to this because that kind of gives you the biggest feel, but happy to answer any questions. And we've offered them the opportunity to speak to you or answer your questions as well. So I'll leave that.
I have a question. The recreation space, this 25,000 square foot building, how does that compare to our current community center?
So the original community center, what you see across the courtyard is phase 1 and 2. So the original phase at 22,500 square feet was 1 gym, the back classrooms, the arts and crafts classroom, several offices that are sort of on the hallway, not in the main, and the game room. The front desk vestibule area and the offices around the front of the building, and then the gym are all add-ons. So 25,000.
If you're
Yeah.
walking in the hallway, all you got to do is look at the brick wall that used to be outside.
Yeah. The brick wall is on the outside of gym one on like 3 sides, that, or 2 sides, that was the outside of the building. And so there are storage closets that are, you know, within that space, and some things that maybe people don't have access to see. And potentially, you know, with 25,000 square foot, you could, I mean, we're trying to be really creative of, you could, you know, put 2 gyms on the first floor and have like a half mezzanine second floor that's offices. And so there might be some ways to make that work. And we've brainstormed with them the idea of having a recreation center that has offices or apartments or something else on top. And so all of those things are things we're going to need time, and they're going to need time to figure out what are their needs and what's the way to use that land to the highest value and to bring the most benefit to the town. So,
And the greatest, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lisa. Just the greatest change in kind of removing specific language relative to kind of athletic fields and a specific number of a specific type of athletic field, I guess is kind of the biggest change to this.
I think, yes, the fact that it was dedicating acreage, and now what we're looking at and space for those things, it wasn't necessarily providing those things, it was providing the acreage. So what we're sort of switching to is, instead of it being just land that could accommodate those, it's land that's going to accommodate one of those items and construct that item.
But still dedicating easement to our public greenways, the hospital?
So any greenways built within Viridia, and that's a whole separate section within this, that's and there are greenways planned right now that will be public and public maintained, that are within the Lennar project. So those would be designed and built and provided to the town.
Prior to the time that the property receives its final.
So the timing, I need to look at if it's different, but where's the greenway section? I'd have to check the language that here we go. I don't know that it says. I'd have to go back and see. I don't see the exact timeline for the greenways in here, but traditionally in a plan development, the ordinance, if the language isn't written in here, it would convert to the ordinance, and the ordinance says in plan developments it's 25% of the building permits the greenway would have to be done, and we'd have to understand what that meant, because in this sense, you have multiple builders, and so we would probably look at it as 25% of, if it's in Lennar's section and Lennar's building it, that it would be at 25% of their section, because if they built 500 apartments someplace else, that might impact them and they might not. So we'll have to work out with those details. But
What's the kind of service that's envisioned for the mobility hub?
we're not going to call it a mobility hub anymore, because we were told today that name has changed at planning's request, but the bus transit center. So it could be that an additional, I mean, they're looking at our current circulator route. We could potentially, in the timeline for our transit committee, have a second circulator route or an expanded bus service. And so the idea would be that this would be a place where not only our, Go Apex services, but any of the other routes that come up from Holly Springs and go into Apex and are going to be where we currently have our sort of crossover section, or the new mobility hub that's proposed in downtown Apex, that you might have a bus service that comes from Holly Springs, stops through here and goes up to that mobility hub, that you could then transfer to a bus that goes to Cary or into RTP, or get onto our town circulator route and mix up the same thing. So That's definitely a planning requirement, and their idea of what that looks like, we're not really engaged in it other than being involved in conversations that I've heard, that it would meet some of those requirements. So, and be a way to bring, people who might be coming to Wake Tech instead of having them, have to drive or.
Just a follow-up related to Nick's question is, I think it's accurate that our gyms are about 9,000 square feet. Does that sound right to you?
I think so.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about the size, I know the senior center, I think is 27.5 for our square footage, but when you're thinking about what kinds of space is available in that size rec center, that might give you a basis for comparison.
And something like this, so because this is obviously, it seems like we need indoor space.
Right.
By
That seems like
moving forward in this direction, how much does this move the timeline of making this possible versus if we were to keep it the old way?
I don't know that we necessarily have a timeline laid out.
No, I know that the next indoor facility that we had on our radar to sort of be online is up in Wimberley, so the northwest portion of town that doesn't have any recreation, also north of 64, west of 540, and so and that project, as we are looking at it, we don't see that one being able to be put up, like starting construction. The earliest is maybe 2030, 2031, and so whether or not this is ahead of that or could potentially be in line, and I'm speaking, their project build out, you're talking 10 years, like minimum. Yeah. And so if there's a potential that this area is starting and they're getting rooftops and they've got enough coming from fees that they're ready to implement that plan. And that's kind of what we need to figure out is where's that endpoint that doesn't make it not doable, but yet soon enough that it helps us. And so I think we were kind of saying if we're talking about like 5 to 10 years, we're still ahead of where we are almost with any other project. And
to be clear, we have no funding for the Wimberley project other than design funds.
right.
I think that's where I was trying to
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have there's no funds.
Yeah. And so in a sense, when we were presenting capital projects last year and discussing it, which got us the funding to start Wimberley Design, we put up 4 projects and that would be potentials. Wimberley Road was the highest priority, and we presented that Veridiana Recreation Center, sort of covering the other end. And at that point, because we knew the timeline was farther out for us to even know the land, the council said that's, let's focus on spending and looking at the resources of what to build and where based on these other projects. So Wimberley moved to design, and then we had 2 greenways, substantial greenway corridors that moved to design. And so that's kind of what they were telling us was, that's the funding we'll search out, the new funding. And so, and that's why we're, looking at that 29, like, if it's a bond referendum, then it would be like November of 29 that we would do that. So that means money would not be available till, potentially the next July at the earliest.
I had a thought and a question a while back, Angela. You made mention of with the indoor space, we would have the opportunity or the influence of what happens with that space or what goes in that space. You said we would have to figure that part out still. You mentioned
Yes.
that earlier.
Yes. So in the original SD plan section of our specific recreation requirements, we spelled out in a sense that the 22,500 square foot included a list of 4 staff office spaces, 1 gymnasium, full-size basketball court, 94 by 50 feet, 3 combinable convertible classroom spaces that seat a minimum of 150 guests, storage for each classroom to accommodate. So we spelled out basically what the community center was at the time. Right. And so, for us, that identifying what are our priority needs, what did our master plan that we, just adopted say, and it's like we're talking about camp space or, like pickleball and basketball and volleyball. So gym space is like probably the priority. associated with gym space is we have to have office staff that manage that facility and program it, and then you have to have, you don't necessarily want to build just 2 gymnasiums and 2 offices when you could have a couple classrooms. And so figuring out how that works and what that looks like, and how do we maximize that agreeable square footage into what we need at the most, and what other pieces could we tie in together. And so and sort of the how does it look and how tall is it, and some of those things are, and what are they agreeing when they're saying that 25,000 square foot, is that the footprint, is that maximum usable square foot? Like, it just sort of sounds open until you realize you have to start like figuring out what those pieces are. And we're all sort of at the table saying we are agreeing generally that this is a good direction. And so the goal is to get to a place where we're all comfortable and happy, and it's a benefit to what they're building in Viridia, and it's a benefit to the residents that are moving there, and it also helps fulfill needs that we've already identified with our existing population. And so for us, this appears to be headed in a direction that's positive. We all need more time at the table. But they also have a timeline that they're trying to meet to get to town council. And you're not scheduled to meet until after that date. So we're a little early to meet with you, but you're also not meeting next month, and they're planning at this point to go to town council in December. So that's why the second recommendation sort of says, generally understand what's being proposed, and if you as a group collectively generally agree with that direction, then you're giving us the guidance to continue to develop that to a place where we're meeting your intent. And so
You're not looking for a motion then at this point?
well, we are looking for a motion, but it would be more in line with the second of that paragraph that sort of says that, and that's similar to just take it down as a smaller scale. If you had a 500 unit neighborhood with the rezoning, and you have a, say, land dedication with fee in lieu and credit for construction of a greenway to be determined at the time of site plan, we're kind of saying that. But because of this being such a big project, and because they had very specific conditions, they're either obligated to what's there today if council, moved and said we don't want any changes, or we're taking a recommendation that we all are saying they've proposed a change. We agreed to this set of changes, and that
Later on, we'll.
and as we get to that, we'll figure out how much information we have to take with with the staff report to planning board and town council, and how much wiggle room there is, or how many details there have to be in that document. So of course
Right now, it is them building a 25,000 square foot facility and some level of land dedication, but that is yet to be determined still.
it would be to like with the
Within
site.
Blue bubble.
Yes, because we've identified that's in their project, this was a place where they said, what do you think about being here? And we were like, this is in proximity. The school, well, you can see it probably. The school site sort of sits right in here, the Wake County, well, maybe right here. Wake County Public School site, this general area is the Wake Tech site, and this right here is where they're talking about. So close to 55, close to this Jesse Drive extension, 540 swings right, sort of just south of here. And so it is in their activated eastern, they call it East Village, and it's almost all of this area. This is all Lennar's area, and then there's this core sort of commercial. There's another apartment complex that's already approved up here. And so there's a lot happening to bring people, and just roughly, I said if they went with 5,000, if they got to 5,000 units at 3 residents, that's 15,000 new residents in this area. And so enough to support on their own, probably a recreation center. And so it's a amenity to them, but it's also something we know we need, and so it would be programmed, similar to our space, and we would maximize the use of it.
So what you're looking for is a motion.
Yes.
So can I just go ahead and make the motion?
Can I ask one more question? I just want to understand the stormwater park in relation to all of this and the linear park. Is that we are developing that, so we are developing park space in offsetting what we would need to develop in the future, or what is that
So
connect to the dialogue?
So that's the first sort of condition that they're proposing is that that they grant the town this a public access easement over that, and that it would allow us to develop a program for develop an agreement of how we could utilize that space. So they're building it, they're maintaining it, but we have the ability. I'm going to use this reference similarly, like the contracted services, right? We're going to program it for special events so that we can, move events that maybe require us to shut down the street or shut down Town Hall campus. We could potentially move those off to that in that sort of more developed area as an alternative to bringing events to that site versus us developing a new site. So we have a need for entertainment and special event space, and so again, but we don't have to maintain it or have staff that takes care of it.
Not offer, that's a huge thing from
Yeah.
a maintenance perspective.
Is there language
For
just
Parks and Rec.
that what we're seeing here is what will be developed in the end, just because it's so early? I mean, that there will be those spaces that would be usable.
I know this is concept, but you guys have site plan approval for that park already?
It's actually
That's-
built.
The pond is built, but I think they've already gone, I was pretty sure site plan approval for it with the other areas around there that are in the East Village. So, yes, I've heard if you fly over, you can see the pond. So it's that big. Almost Harris. No, I'm just kidding.
No, just all the park improvements that make it a park that would be programmable.
Yes. And I mean, an activated open space, walkways and seating areas. And so it would just enable us to have a space that, that we don't have. And a feeling more of it's very natural areas like that downtown doesn't have, that you come here or you go to Hunter Street Park to experience that. They're putting that right into their core of where development's happening.
I have one last comment, if I could, and that is, I'm glad that you are attentive to the issue of parking, and I think obviously, depending on the kind of uses that are going to occur, they're going to potentially pose some challenges. But I think that's important for us to be mindful of with regard to access and utilization of the rec center.
And the thing we've talked about is framing some kind of shared parking, but understand we'll have to figure out what that looks like as they know what they're doing on those parcels and where we're located with that.
So you want to make a motion and
Yeah, so then I would move to make the motion to accept the second recommendation to allow staff to continue to work through the specifics of this proposed amendment.
Second.
it's been motioned and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Next up, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
No one wants to leave. No one wants to leave. Second. All right. All in favor? Aye. Meet adjourned.